Welcome everybody to the next installment of Music Cities Conversations. I've got two amazing guests today. We've never done this before, but we thought, why not? If we can get one, we can get two. And again, this whole thing is about people that inspire me, inspire sound diplomacy, people who we've looked to over the years, and the activities that they have done to, to think about how we can better support our music economies and ecosystems. So please, I'm thrilled to welcome former mayor of Kansas City, Sly James, and his chief of staff, Joni Wickham. Sly and Joni, could you please introduce yourselves?
Sure. First of all, didn't you tell us that you wanted to get us together so that you could recreate the Mod Squad with a Link and Julie lookalike?
That was the plan, yes.
That was a plan? Okay. Well, it's good to be with you, Shain. Sly James, former mayor of Kansas City, Missouri, here with my good friend Joni. Joni?
Hi, Joni Wickham, former chief of staff to Kansas City Mayor Sly James and current co-founder of Wickham James Strategy Solutions, and wife to a singer-songwriter, which means that I get the whole music scene, maybe even more than some elected officials and their staff.
That's a full-time job on top of a full-time job.
Yeah, and Sly has a background in music too.
I know.
Sure. Yeah, started a long time ago. And every now and then I get to do a little song or two with Joni's husband, Fred. Fred being a tremendous musician who had a successful release in Europe a year or two ago. So at any rate, yeah, we're here because we love music and know what it can do for a city.
But on that note, obviously we're facing a crisis, and Sly, kind of put your mayor's hat on. If you were the mayor of a city today, it doesn't have to be Kansas City. What would you be thinking about in terms of the plight of the creative economy in general, as well as musicians, and how would you try to tackle some of the challenges that they're facing?
Well, the first thing I think I'd be thinking about is the fact that since a lot of our music venues, I wouldn't say a lot, I'd say all of our music venues are closed down under our stay home order as being non-essential, that would be problematic for musicians, for people who own the venues, for everybody who works in those venues, whether it's through food or management or alcohol or whatever the issue is. How are we going to make sure that they remain viable when we finally come out of this problem? That is the main thing that I think we all need to be worried about. At one time I thought, well, maybe we could convince some of the conservatory musicians and some of the musicians just to stand outside and play. But then I was also wondering, and who would be there to hear them? And if they were outside playing, would they draw a crowd that shouldn't be drawn from those who were out when they should have been inside? So it's a very touchy subject. Now, wish I could tell you I had the answers, but I think the best answer is exactly what we're doing, and that's video. Joni, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, one of the things that struck me when we were in the mayor's office were there's two components to life that tend to have a dramatic and positive impact on the psyche of a city, and that's music and sports. And it's interesting in times like this that the things that we draw upon for strength, I think music's certainly one of them. So I think over the next weeks and months, you're going to see people getting pretty creative about how they can consume their favorite types of arts and culture.
But what tools are there? Are there any tools at a city's disposal? Right now? And I'm not, again, in a general sense, to recognize the value, so that when they're back, that they could, be given an extra leg up or something from a tax perspective, or are we kind of in a new world, Sly?
Well, I don't know that you can do much from a tax perspective. That's a whole set of rules, regulations. For example, with TIF, you have to be able to generate sales tax in order to receive the benefit of it. And then the benefit comes back really in terms of infrastructure or something else. And it has to go through a laborious process that would not be available. There aren't any handy dandy tax write-offs that you can do in Kansas City because of our charter and because of state law. But I think what can happen is that there can be a planned gathering, a planned concert, planned day of celebration where everybody comes together. If we could find the day to do an entire day or on a weekend and have music presented no charge to people so they could come and gather, that would be great. Now that's, as you know, Shain, it's easy to say, and organizing that is a whole nother layer of other things. The problem that you've got is that right now resources and attention are being diverted to the virus and everything else. It's hard to get attention of city leaders now shifted to anything other than that, because a lot of them are working with skeletal crews as it is.
Yeah. And Joni,
Joni, what do you think?
what do you?
Yeah, it was interesting. I have a first grader who's quarantined at home with me. We're doing virtual school. And yesterday we did a virtual field trip to the Sydney Opera House. And it was interesting to me that type of tool and experience is still available to us. We just have to know it's out there and be willing to explore it. So that might be one way to kind of keep the arts and culture scene alive in cities, is to use technology and the iPhone or whatever you have at your fingertips to explore some of those hidden gems that might be right there in your city.
Yeah, you know, like what we're doing right now is great, but Zoom is really basically a live process, whereas YouTube could be used to have a lot of things pumped out now. That would be good. It would, I keep wanting to do something that says, okay, at such and such a day and such a time, we're all going to blank together. And I'm struggling to see how to do that, and without driving myself crazy with the logistical things. Whenever I think of something like that, the first thing I think of is, wow, I don't have any staff to do all the hard work for me. I might have to do this myself. Why are you laughing, Joni? But you know what I mean? I mean, I think it would be great to have some sort of a concert, even if it's a virtual concert. I don't know if you can get 50 people tied in to the same YouTube channel at one time and do something, but something like that I think would be really a cool thing to do.
But that is happening. You know, there's one company called the Orchard have done Stay at Home Festival on Instagram Live, bands every hour. A bunch of musicians did Quarantine Festival where they all played in their bedroom over a weekend. There were about 50 artists. Like, yeah. But we're kind of thinking as well, and I know this is too early to tell, but something, you know, if artists are simply unable to pay their rent, for example, or mortgage, or whatever, and nonprofits are going out of business, and this has been 2 or 3 weeks, you know, something must not have been working. To create a system that left us so vulnerable to whatever it was. This time it's a virus. And, you know, I love putting people on the spot, and because you are one of my favorite resident former mayors, probably the main one, do you think that something in terms of supporting our arts and creative and music economy was broken, or is this just the way it is?
No, I think that it's part of humanity to be what's the word I'm looking for? To overlook and to be satisfied with what's in front of them without realizing what happens when it goes away. There's a word I'm looking for, and I can't get it into my head at the moment. But
Joni Mitchell.
Well, you know, the thing about it is that I just go back to the old lyric: "You don't miss the water till the well runs dry," and I think that's absolutely true. Music is ubiquitous. It's almost so ubiquitous that you don't even realize it's there anymore. When you open up your car, unless you're listening to sports or talk radio or some of these really bomb-throwing folks, there's usually music when you open up the car playing on your radio. There's music when you get on an elevator, when you walk around. And sometimes, because it is so ubiquitous, you just assume that it's part of the atmosphere and it's there, and you go on. So you're presumptive about it. It's only when it's threatened that you start to recognize its value. That's true of everything, I think. what happens with government is that government spends so much time trying to do the things that are clearly something for the majority in a very tangible way, because that's what really the public demands. You know, they want to see the concrete laid, they want to see the buildings go up, their streets swept, their trees trimmed. That's where the focus gets drawn. We took an approach very early in our administration that we wanted to support, grow the arts, and get out there, which is why we commissioned the Convergence Report, and I appointed my former rival to run it. And we had a 2-year process on that that's led to some good things. And whenever we had a chance or an opportunity, we talked up the arts, we did fundraising with them, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that we have good recognition of what it is in terms of our soul, but also what it is in terms of the finances in a city. It's an economic driver, it's an economic development tool, but it is often difficult to get the public to see the value of investing tax dollars in it. So you have to be very strategic.
Yep. Joni, you know, again, it's, what do you think? I feel that it's one of those things, it's the same argument as it's worth X amount in whatever city, but clearly there's no infrastructural investment or very little. And again, I'm not talking about Kansas City here, I'm just talking about cities in general.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true that people don't necessarily realize what they have in front of them until it's gone. But to take that a step further, a lot of, when we're talking about arts and culture, a lot of times, even subconsciously, we're talking about people who are at least middle class, communities who are from lower income neighborhoods just typically don't have access to arts and culture like others. And cities have to be very deliberate about how they ensure that everybody, regardless of the zip code that they live in, has access to those types of things. And I think that's even more difficult to kind of hone into in times like this.
Well, you know, and that's one of the reasons that we had an NTDF, Neighborhood Tourism and Development Fund, that was used. And a lot of times, I agree wholeheartedly with Joni when we're talking about the traditional arts and culture scene, the museums, the Kemper, the Sprint Center, Kaufman Performing Arts Center, etc.
And these are all places in Kansas City. Remember, we have an international audience.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They are all places in Kansas City, fabulous places in Kansas City that I encourage everyone to come see, participate in when you have a chance, particularly Kaufman Center for Performing Arts. But there is culture on different levels and in different ways. I mean, if you go into an African-American neighborhood picnic, there's usually going to be some music out there and some culture of some sort. It may be less formal culture, but it's still cultural. There's always music somewhere.
And no less valid, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. It's always there. But the problem is that with when you have city government, and I know this is an easy trap, but it is a trap that is real when you have to deal with a public as diverse as we have in Kansas City. For example, it is difficult to move the block in big blocks because whenever you take a dollar from one thing, you have to justify to the people who get gored. So you have to find creative ways to address the arts. First thing that we tried to do, and I think a lot of cities have actually tried to do, some with varying degrees of success, is to make sure that people had an understanding that arts and culture drove the economy in various sectors, but also that it contributed a whole lot to the lifestyle. And you have to do it in ways that even the most conservative person would understand. If we do this, this will be the result that you will feel. If we do this, we will have more companies moving to the area because they really want a city that is culturally diverse and rich, just like with sports. So there's a lot of different tactics, but it is when you're dealing with cities where problems stop, healthcare is rampant, poverty is on full display, kids aren't getting educated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The hierarchy of needs starts at a different level.
Yeah.
And then, and although it's like being in a room, but the air in that room is the culture and the arts and music, and the richness and the quality of that air is directly related to the richness and the quality of your cultural institutions. Funding them is always difficult, and that's something that we're actively trying to work on.
Yeah. So what, we always try to end on a positive note. This is a crisis, but when we look to supporting our music and arts and culture ecosystems, do you think this, what's happening, um, could present some opportunities for cities to think about this in a different way? Joni?
For sure. I think anytime you have a crisis, you have an opportunity to reframe your thinking and to reset expectations. So I fully expect cities and state governments, developers to think about how they can incorporate music and the arts more fully and in a more sustainable way after this.
I think though that if that's going to happen, and I think that there is an opportunity. I don't necessarily think that it is an obvious opportunity, because by the time we come out of this, everybody is going to be so freaked out about the economy and job shifting and plants closing down and what's happened to small business and all the losses and yada yada yada. I don't think their heads are going to go there. I think their heads are first going to go to the place where it is most in their face, which is the economic and financial condition of jobs and businesses and people in the city. And they will not think about the arts and culture as part of that unless they have a reason to do so. The real trick is to show them that there is a viable reason to do so that will not only not interfere with the goals of trying to reestablish everything, but enhance those goals. It's got to be seen as a positive, because I will guarantee you that anybody in elected office or the administration of a city government is going to have so much to deal with when they come out of this thing, that unless they have a specific agenda item that says, oh yeah, integrate music and arts and culture into every damn thing that you're doing, they're not going to. But before they do that, they're going to have to be shown that there's a reason to do that. And I think you're probably in a damn good position to do that, Shain, because you've been doing this around the world and the country. You know the value of it. Maybe there's something that you can do that would help promote that in a way. And there's, because it is something that needs to be thought about, but they need to have a return on investment analysis of that in a very pragmatic way.
Which is the point of many of these conversations, trying to get the world together, as through Zoom, to have this type of conversation. So on that note, we always ask our guests to recommend or to tell us what they listened to this morning or this afternoon, a song for our Music Cities Conversations Isolation playlist, which is available on our website as well. So what have you two been listening to? Name a song for me.
Well,
Choices by George Jones.
You've been listening to what?
Choices by George Jones.
That's a
okay.
Love it.
Well, I've been much more pragmatic. Because I'm learning to play bass by internet, and one of the bass lines that I'm being taught is the bass line from Bad by Michael Jackson. I've listened to that quite a bit. But another song I've been listening to is Double Trouble, Joe Bonamassa doing a Muddy Waters tune, Double Trouble. And I love the blues, and that's about as bluesy as it gets.
Yeah, that's
tells me that this evening we're going to be listening to a lot of John Prine. God bless him.
Yeah, I agree. Well, John Prine is going to feature on our playlist.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us for Music Cities Conversations. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.